he's got that very scary foresight of going up against one of those two Zerg Titans in the next round. Actually, so wild. I can't believe that I only realized that now, but one of the big three is not going to make it to the season finals. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. For now, all eyes on this one. In the bottom left side, we're looking at the main base. The reigning European champion representing Team Liquid, it is Clem.
Up in the top right-hand corner, we've got the blue Terran player, souL. I just had to do a very quick check of souL's new team, just double check, and it is indeed Berserker Esports that he has joined. And he's definitely the highlight player there, but also alongside Spats, who we've seen in a couple of these DreamHack seasons, and on the rise Protoss. So, yeah, cool to see souL finding a new team so quickly after Cascade unfortunately had to drop a few of their players.
Spats is my German Protoss brethren. He's actually the one who beat me in the final DreamHack qualifier this season. But it's okay, I forgive him. Nothing but love for Spats. He is a great Protoss. I think he actually only made it to the DreamHack Masters once. And it's mostly because he's been getting a little bit unlucky in some of the players he's been getting in those close qualifiers. His PvZ is not quite as good as his PvP and his PvT. But we'll talk more about Spats hopefully in the future. For now, all eyes on these two, as both of them opening up in a very standard casual manner here. It's going to be double refinery, barracks at home into a factory. I think it's very safe to say, Wadi, that Clem is going to be the aggressor in this best of 5, and souL is going to try to stabilize, hold, and eventually get ahead when he's on 5 bases with sensor towers.
5 bases, Roddy. I feel like you might be guessing a little bit low there. souL is going to love his macro game. He is going to love sitting back and just playing a long con, basically. He is a big fan of that, so excited to see what he will bring to the table. Yeah, I mean, Clem, just aggressive, right? He always is, and he is always the play with the medevac opening, with the push across the map, trying to find the initial damage, and sometimes to his own detriment. Sometimes he tries too hard lately, I feel like, to push that damage early, and then he just finds himself in an awkward position against a counterattack he can't quite hold on against. It's something to watch out for, because it's definitely been more prominent recently than it has been before, so something to maybe keep an eye out for. Otherwise, obviously, we are just setting up and waiting for what exactly these two want to do. Right now, very similar until you realize that it's 2 Marines on one side and 2 Hellions on the other. So Clem with the heavy Hellion count early, and that's already saying, you know what, let's get across the map, let's be active with a lot of early game units.
It's always fascinating to me in how blind these guys are in general in TVT early on. I understand you don't want to send your Reaper out and then it gets caught by 2 Reapers and then you find yourself in a bit of a dicey spot almost immediately. But it is kind of weird how we're now 3.5 minutes in, and other than the initial STV scout on either side, we really don't see anything. Now, souL is going for the Raven, and indeed Clem is going for that medevac you already mentioned. I will always think of Gabe when he casted a couple of games with me. The stay-at-home Story Cups, like, yeah, Clem goes medevac like every game. And then I was like, well, he's actually not wrong. I mean, 9 out of 10, I'd say.
Yeah, no, it was. I think of that too because you tell that story every time, and it is very true. And it is such a good point because I feel like none of us really noticed it, but of course Big Gabe did, and he was very, very right. And even knowing though those medevacs can be dangerous, he come. Our 4 Hellions are going to drop to the side and going to aim for that mineral line. There's not a lot in position to defend. A Cyclone about to pop, but you can cancel the lock-on with the medevac pickup here. The auto turret gets blocked by the Hellions. The SDV pull was decent at least, but I mean, these Hellions take no damage so far.
Wow.
And that's 5 workers for basically free.
Yep, and the Reaper is in the natural too. The Reaper could get an SCV kill, gets an SCV kill, could get the second one. My goodness, what a start for Clem on here. Can he get another one? No, he cannot. But the fact that all 4 Hellions are still so healthy and the medevac is still so healthy. If you talk about a flying start, Wadi, this qualifies as a flying start. Clem is going to fake the medevac drop, and then the Hellions are going to try to dive into the natural. They do find the Cyclone, and they do not want to stick around too long, so Clem does not get any damage with his second wave, but with Clem there is always the 3rd try and sometimes the 4th try as well. This brings me back to the Lucifron days It feels like the medevac is firing. Medevac does get locked on. Cyclone gets the kill. I almost feel that if Clem would have never picked up, he would have found way more damage than what he did now.
Yeah, if he just like left the Hellions there and just kept on fighting, could have ran by maybe. Yeah, maybe didn't need to necessarily trade out those units. But it's kept souL very busy, and Clem's had a good setup back at home. His own Ravens are obviously coming through. He's up to a siege tank and a third CC building as well. And that's got to be the major difference between them right now. A third CC well underway versus souL, who's just not quite found that yet. So something that might be the difference between them in the next couple of minutes.
Clem is obviously going to take some map control too. He's going to take control of the Zelnaga watchtowers. souL is going to try to do something about it. souL did have Raven number 3 and 2 quite a bit quicker than Clem had, and I guess even the first one. That's just how it goes when one person decides to open up with a medevac. So there's going to be some more energy perhaps to work with. Defensively, I don't think souL should be in all that much trouble, but he does miss this army moving out. And if Clem would have actually tried to go into the natural and siege up those tanks in an early spot, it could have been dicey for souL. But souL dodges a bullet as Clem returns home.
Yep. souL just going to be able to get to that third base location fairly nicely here. But this is going to be a CC that just builds in locations. So that will be part of his way of trying to catch up. And then obviously going to try and use this army to make something happen here as well.
Okay, souL knows that his army of Clem is here. Clem didn't know. All the tanks are going to siege. All the auto turrets go down. It seems like a very good fight for souL with the amount of auto turrets that he got down. And Clem's army just kind of melts here. And that's the power of having vision. That's the power of knowing where your opponent's army is. souL gets a monstrous trade here. And Clem is immediately in some trouble in a game where it should have been good for him. Wow, Zelnagas are a useful thing to have control of, aren't they?
Yeah, he was just wandering around and really just did not have a clue about where souL was at. And souL jumps on it, and now you can see souL going to have the Viking advantage. That Raven of Clem's going to be in trouble. He has to lift his third base up, and this is immediately souL just taking advantage of this and just saying, well, you know what? Now my third base being laid, it doesn't matter all that much, does it? And obviously Clem needs to make sure this keeps alive. Should be able to do that, as we do have the tank on the high ground. Going to try and hold, but then the Ravens are going to auto turret that down. That means that souL can keep this push going. There is a Cyclone that was locked onto, I believe, a Viking. It loses that lock on now. And souL even just has low HP tanks that are just about alive and getting so much extra damage done. Even Clem's factory in some trouble. And this attack of souL, it ain't stopping just yet, Roddy. Although he is starting to lose a couple units. Another Viking going down. But man, Clem's literally about to lose the factory. Oh my god, gets the tank out, but loses that.
Tank does pop. souL's macro is slipping a little bit while all of this is going on. Obviously, he's paying attention to his units. Got up to 1,000 minerals. I feel the longer he sticks around, the more damage he will take, though. What did he just get a cancel on? I guess the barracks that Clem was trying to build, because no gas was going down there. Clem is throwing down another scan. Does not kill that Viking. A Liberator is going to show up as well to make this even more gnarly. Clem is going to be forced to unsiege his tanks. Does get a lock on with his Cyclone though, and that should be good enough. Interference Matrix keeps the Liberator alive.
Yeah, nicely played there. I mean, I gotta say, Clem has somehow still got a decent work account. His army supply is still up there. Just souL has the position, and the Liberators especially, making a bit of a difference. The Marine actually took a shot to the tanks. Whoa, would have gone away, but then he was blocked by his own Marines, so the Marines helped, then kind of forced the tank to die. Meanwhile, the Liberators nearly went down, but not quite as well. The Cyclone also lives on low HP, and souL will keep on encroaching on this position, but with very low health units.
Yep, I mean, 1-1 is done for Clem. He doesn't have an insane amount of Marines, but he's got 23. Some of these tanks are very low on HP. I do think that Clem is about ready. The Liberator is going to siege up. Look at how low HP both Liberators are. It's not one, it's not two, but both of them. The STV is a bit misrallied there. Oh man, this is very uncomfortable for Clem, but it's not necessarily bad. He's going to pick up 8 Marines, and is he going to try to come in from the left side?
Shields, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, the tanks are going to unsiege as well. The other two tanks are so low on HP. The only two tanks that are sieged are very low on HP. Clem is going to lose a lot of STVs, but he will definitely clean this up.
In fact, he didn't lose any STVs. Like, I mean, this is one of those scenarios you expect him to lose 15, 20, but he didn't lose any, right? So that was actually not so bad, and he just gets a big cleanup. He's got a 1-1 upgrade advantage as well, something that souL has only just started to work on here. And that might be Clem's way back in as he moves across the map at least a little bit. He's actually going to start loading up medevacs and focusing on drops as his way to try and now deal some damage.
Yep, souL's actually building a fourth command center on location. which I think is a little bit adventurous considering the fact that he doesn't have a lot of vision there, and also he doesn't have those upgrades on the Marines. Double drop is gonna get greeted though by 2 medevacs. Clem doesn't give a damn by 2 missile turrets, excuse me, and 1 Viking. Clem is going to unload, but he's gonna lose all these units relatively quickly. Does find some damage, but losing STVs is not the worst thing in the world for souL, because souL had 82. Now the armies are gonna meet each other in the center too. This is where upgrades do really shine though, and that medevac really shines too. And if Clem just walks a little bit further towards the north side, he is going to see that command center there. Clem, you can just get on top of that. Claymore.
I mean, he sees it fully, and now he only just realizes it's a little bit distracted elsewhere. Man, you're right, though. That medevac and those upgrades, the difference they made in that fight. souL's Marines just disappeared. And Clem obviously coming out big there. souL is catching up on upgrades. Clem will still have a 2-2 advantage for a little while, of course, and we'll see how he tries to make use of that further down the line. For the moment, well, this army is settling down. We're going to just have 1 drop of souL, and otherwise, the game might actually calm down a little bit with both of them in even-ish positions. An advantage here and an advantage there.
I love how Clem was super decisive, even when he saw the 2 missile turrets. Like, it could scare you, and then you could go back for it, and then you take extra shots from the Viking. He just decided to fully stand it. He's like, no, I know that I am in a bit of trouble if I don't do anything. So he went for it. I think it's safe to say he found the damage that he's looking for. Found some damage in the main, won the fight in the center, and got a cancel on that 4th command center that was almost done. It's once more just a bit of a roller coaster, man. I don't know what's happening today, but we didn't have any games so far where one person just took the lead and closed it out, other than maybe Max Pax Killer's Game 5. But even that, just because it was Game 5, it felt tense.
Yeah, no, every single game has been a banger, and the TVT is saying, hey, I can be as good a matchup as PvP, just watch. Well, still has a long way to go, but a fantastic start as Clem going to make his move out with the larger army now, but souL's flying a base out to that 4th location with the tanks set up, etc. I don't really think there's a way for Clem to push in. You know, with the scrappy start we've had, there's no Ravens left alive apart from 1 of souL, so there shouldn't be a lot of chances to attack in, because with the 2-2 upgrades, even that doesn't really give you like a push in, right? Like a Marine upgrade advantage helps you if a Marine skirmish happens. It doesn't help you break positions necessarily. Nice little counter drop too, and Clem has nothing to deal with this right away.
Yep, very well done by souL, because he had that medevac there for a long time, but he was very patient, stayed outside of range of the sensor tower that he now guns down. Clem will be able to push this back, but still, solid job by souL, because Clem finally made it to the other side of the map, and now he's kind of forced to return again, return home. Was a little bit late on starting +3, could have started it a bit quicker. The Vikings and the Marines will find his army in the bottom right side, but Clem has no medevac there, so he needs to respect those Marines.
Yep, and these Marines actually going to go stimming through, gets a Viking kill, so Viking will go down. Other tanks sieging up here as well. Clem with the position on the map, right? And I always feel like that's a powerful thing to have in TVT, this map control by just being there, because you're the player that can maybe find an opening. You're the player that can jump on an opportunity if it arises. And that's what Clem is looking for, looking to see if there's any gaps in souL's defense, seeing if he's going to keep up with moving those tanks around.
Wadi, there is a triple drop heading towards the main base of Clem. Clem's Marine did not see it. Clem does not have any missile turrets there. Clem really has no units in his main. This could be a devastating drop as these armies are flirting with each other in the center. Clem is about to get hit by 24 Marines, and that is a drop that is really going to hurt.
Oh, yes, it is. It's going to go for the orbital commands. The Marines and Clem will try and do whatever they can, but the orbital will go down. And Clem is pulling everything almost back home to deal with this. Maybe leaving a few tanks out there, I think, on the far right-hand side. But yeah, a lot pulling back home. And those tanks are now going to be out of position because souL's main army is just going to dive bomb through and head straight towards the natural. And Clem won't have any tanks to help defend this position. 1 tank, well, that ain't scary compared to what we're used to. And souL is just going to take in a massive position here. And the tanks of Clem are walking through tank fire. He knows it's just about in time, and somehow he is holding. What?
That looked so bad for a split second. It looked game-ending bad, and it's obviously still kind of bad. Clem is definitely not out of the woods yet. Lost a lot of depots, lost that orbital. Well, now he's losing a few more tanks because he didn't quite scan in time. souL is getting further and further ahead in this one, as he does lose those 2 Vikings, but souL is having another command center finishing up at home. There aren't too many Marines left here, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. If I was Clem and I look at this army, can't we drop Marines on top of these tanks before the reinforcements arrive? Clem, if you want to do that, you gotta go right about now because the reinforcements are about to show up. Clem instead says, you know what, I'm gonna try to do the same thing as you just did. And he picks up with 3 medevacs full of Marines. They're on the left side. Clem knows about his army. All of his Marines are still stuck in these medevacs.
Yeah, he decides to unload them in the end. As souL's gonna start pushing through, but tanks already siege from Clem. Don't like this. He kills one tank, but he loses so many Marines. Now souL's gonna try and drop on top of the tanks, but there are a couple Marines at least nearby. Don't feel like that was quite what souL was looking for. As Clem's Vikings are coming through and keeping that air control, pushing medevacs back. Again, just chaotic fights here. souL makes a major play. Clem's going to stem forward. He gets a lot of the tanks before they fire, and that might be enough for him to push through this army. Tank after tank going down from souL, and Clem gets everything.
That's like a 60 or 70 army supply swing right there. Clem obviously had +3 attack there, +3 armor is about to finish up for his Marines too. souL overextending a little bit there, sticking around a bit longer perhaps than he should have. Still in a playable position if Clem is going to give him time, but I kind of feel Clem, after getting such a big victory, don't you want to see if you can get something done on the other side of the map? Maybe he's a little bit anxious because he lost all his sensor towers, so he's definitely in the dark, but he does have that Zelnaga watchtower. That's going to give him the heads up there are no units there. He's even firing up Corvid Reactor for potential Ravens down the line, as he already has one more Raven. That planetary is so exposed, man. If Clem just goes for it, I think he gets it.
Yeah, I don't see why he wouldn't, right? I mean, tank siege maybe a bit far away, so will not have the tank support on the base. He's actually going to pull back. There is an army of souL making some progress down the right side. You're going to start getting a lot of Marines. Picks up a siege tank as well, so souL's actually going to push on through, and he's going to aim for this base. But with triple tank here seems unlikely, and I don't know what that decision is.
I think that's I didn't know you had triple tank decision.
I thought it was his scan, but I think it was Clem's scan. I think there was a bit of a misplay by me in my brain.
So souL ends up losing a couple of Marines, ends up losing the planetary, and definitely has a hard time catching up in supply. So with a bit of a move command there, and he's forced to tap out. My goodness. What a first game, a 17-minute back and forth match. It starts off flawless for Clem, where you kill 7 SUVs, loses 1 Reaper, then loses the Hellions, loses the medevac, and it's like, it's still pretty good. And Clem took a bad fight near the Zelnaga watchtower, and it felt like, could souL just close it out? No, but souL got ahead. Then Clem did some Clem stuff and definitely found himself in a playable spot again. But then souL with a triple drop in the main base, and it felt like he had a lock. I really thought that when Clem was rallying his tanks into those 6 tanks that souL sieged up at the ramp, I was like, oh no, this is too painful. I can't watch. I closed my eyes because I'm like, Clem's gonna lose everything. And then Clem doesn't lose everything, and eventually it's souL who overextends a little bit, loses most of his Marines, and Clem out turns in the round after losing his main base, losing a whole bunch of depots. So fortunate he didn't have his E-base in the main, by the way, Wadi, because imagine if he doesn't have those 3-3 upgrades. I don't think he wins the game.
Yeah, I can get behind that as well. It was it's almost like this TVT was trying to be the PvPs from earlier, right? It's like, someone deals like some damage, and the other guy's like, no, that's not how it works. So I was like, I'm behind, but you know what? I'm going to be the one to deal damage anyway. The counter attacks go off, and just craziness. And one thing I feel like I noticed a lot that happens in with Clem in TVT is that I feel like these things like the triple drop in the main seem to happen, and yet no matter how bad it should be, he seems to somehow come out in like a good position. It's like, well, how does that make sense? Like, he ends up in supply. His tanks didn't walk through the other tanks. Like, souL lost just as much. That stuff is crazy to me.
And even the hold earlier on when the Vikings tanks and those Liberators showed up, like, wow, I can't even really put in words how impressed I am by Clem that he was able to win that game. He had a good start, but that fight near the Zelnaga watchtower, the Reaper and the Cyclone taking control of that Zelnaga watchtower, it gave souL the heads up that army was there, and Clem thought he was just fighting a Reaper and a Cyclone. And by the time he realized he was fighting the entire army, it was too late. souL dropped, I don't know, 8-10 turrets, completely obliterated those tanks. An absolutely insane game. And yeah, if we keep saying that, it feels like, how insane are these games really? But they are, guys. They are so back and forth, and they're so hard to call. This man does find himself down 0-1, but he showed us that he's here to battle, and he absolutely has what it takes to make that Frenchman sweat. He is representing Berserker Esports. It is souL.
top right-hand corner of the map from Team Liquid. Up 1-0 is Clem.
I just hope that Kolaris has at least good internet on his cell phone so he was able to watch that game. Otherwise, I'd feel really sad for him, man. Imagine missing that one out.
I know, man. He's missing out on a treat of TVT at the moment. It's been pretty freaking awesome, hasn't it?
Yes. I was like, I don't think it's going to be better than the PvP. Obviously, we'll see some Clem stuff. I mean, if we go back to that first triple drop, I think souL did a really good job. Initially, with that little 8 Marine drop that he had there for a while, he was very patient with it. And then eventually found some damage. But that also gave him the idea that, like, all right, if I can hide this one through the right side, maybe I can hide even more through the top left. Did a really good job in showing up in the main base. And Clem obviously didn't have vision for that, because Clem was a bit behind from that initial skirmish when the initial fight went so bad. So Clem was not in a position to be investing in missile turrets, in sensor towers. And yeah, how Clem didn't just end up being down 70 supply there while being out of position against 24 Marines, and then also leaving his army on the right side. So it's not just that he's out of position in the main, he's out of position in his natural too against the entire army of souL. It is absolutely amazing how he can stay so calm under that much pressure.
Yeah, there's so many moves you have to make in those moments, so many plays you have to be aware of, and wrongs you have to right basically because of all the out of positions you have. It's really something. As Reaper's down around the top side, just going to be seeing factories finishing up on either side of this, and I mean, completely mirrored builds at the moment. We see a Hellion starting from Clem, and just a few seconds later, out of souL on that as well. So starting in the same way, but there's already a difference. Clem plays another Reaper here, whereas souL says it's time for my reactor to come online. So Clem going to be a little bit more active with Reaper Hellion, and souL maybe even goes Tech Lab after that Hellion too and just says, time for my Cyclone.
Clem has not SCV scouted this game, and souL has not SCV scouted either. They just kind of took a little sneak peek around their main, making sure they won't face any 2-Rex proxy. I was thinking if we're gonna see any of that in this best of 5. I don't think we will. I don't think Clem is gonna do it. souL might if he falls down 0-2, but I kind of forgot what map 3 is. Obviously, it needs to be a good map 4. Possible, okay, I guess. Right?
Yeah, possible. We might see like a 2-Rex from Clem, like in base or something, like defensively, maybe. You know, that's something that he was fond of for a while. Haven't seen it as much as of late, but it was definitely one of his go-tos for at least a little while in the meta.
Command center finishes up. And now Clem also sees what's here, so we're both going to throw down grenades for a little while, and souL realizing that nothing too weird is happening. Clem opening up with a Banshee in this game.
I like it. Just a little bit of extra damage output, perhaps. And one of those scenarios as well, when you look at what souL has right now, a Banshee and a Mineral Line can do so much damage, especially if that Raven doesn't quite go the right way. And you don't need it to get a lot when you don't invest into Cloak. So yeah, it can be pretty disruptive. It also acts as a really good defense. Like if souL shows up with something, feisty and aggressive, he can really turn that around a lot of the time with the Banshee. So I always like that as like a mix and switch it up a little bit. And something that then souL has to think about in future games as well, rather than just assuming there's going to be Ravens coming out every single time.
2K Atmosphere really does provide a lot of good games, right? It's actually,
it's really
I feel like when this map got introduced, I immediately looked at him like, Blackman is a bit weird. I kind of hate slow zones, but it's not too bad. I was like, Beckett, I don't know, Kev. But I was like, 2K, I was like, this seems like a good map. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the map that's going to give us the most good games and that the pros are going to like in almost every matchup. And I really feel that when we do finally say goodbye to Romanticide, which does give us some absolute bangers, but we've also seen a lot of these bangers play out right now. You kind of know where a lot of games go on Romanticide. I think 2K is a very worthy replacement of Romanticide.
I think so too, as this Banshee is going to come straight in. And I love that he changes SCV targets there, so he doesn't waste a shot on an SCV jumping into a refinery and just tanking that. Reapers try and dive the main. souL is positioned to deal with this at least. Clem will still find an SCV building a command center though. He's taking some damage himself back at home. An auto turret coming through and getting a bit of damage as well, but I can't complain for Clem, who is still going to keep this Banshee alive on full HP too, so it's likely to see another day and see another Mineral Line. Yeah, nicely done by Clem, just getting a couple of additional workers over souL.
Don't think Clem really expected souL to rally his first Cyclone to the other side of the map, so I was a bit surprised. Like, an auto turret in my natural? Why are you doing that? But it works out for souL. So yeah, took a punch, but he also threw one back. As Clem sees that this Raven is still there. Feels sometimes where it's like, if you would build a negative IQ Viking, that'd be kind of nice.
The one Viking instead of a Raven early, boom. Kill stuff off, push it back. Yeah, it would be pretty neat. Oh.
All right, Clem just killed a Raven because he threw it on a scan. He got the lock on very early on, and obviously once you have the lock on, it leashes for quite some time. So that's quite lovely for Clem, getting in Raven kill this early on.
Yeah, and especially in a game where he was maybe a bit slower to his own Ravens because of that Banshee. Now you've just got a Raven lead, so even if your Banshee initially had less energy or whatever, now they're going to make up for that. And obviously, I mean, still had been using some energy auto-turreting, but he had gotten some SCVs out of it. Now Clem just has a Raven advantage to play with, and he might even think about doing something with that as his third is down in position. We'll see if he just wants to defend the third or if he really wants to come out for a bit of a push.
Well, souL just picked up 2 medevacs full of units. The Banshee could have absolutely seen that. I don't know if Clem was paying attention, but by the look of his move out and how confident he's feeling with it, whoa, this Helling is getting some good shots off on the Marines, but the Marines do not die. This Banshee has potential, Wadi. I think it can easily pick up 3 or 4 SUVs here.
Still taking a little while to respond. Reinforced Marines at least start coming now. There's your 3, there's your 4, Roddy. Meanwhile, this drop is seen by 1 Marine a little bit ahead of time. souL is going to have Stim, so he will have that in his favor. 6 workers went down. Clem is bringing his whole army back to try and defend this drop, which aims for the third base. The Ravens! Oh, well, that was scary. He loses both Ravens, actually, in the end. I mean, he is going to chase through, and he's probably going to clean it up. But honestly, souL gets a lot of kills out of this. A lot of big units going down. The Ravens, a Viking, a Cyclone. Wow, fantastic drop in the end.
Yep. Clem does have 1 very brave Marine on the low ground, also getting 2 extra SCV kills. Maybe it can find 1 more SCV there, Clem. Not paying attention. That guy could have been a hero. Yeah, the rock's really working against Clem there, right? Clem knew about the army, Clem saw it, but then he couldn't get quite on top of it. And then you're facing the awkward scenario where you're chasing an army that's faster than yours, while your units are slow, their units are fast, and you can't really quite catch up. Well done by souL, definitely getting a lot of value out of his double drop.
Yeah, really well done in that regard as we just wait to see what souL will do now, because he's going to say, let's move across the map. He feels, the damage he dealt with that double drop, and he's going to try and push it 1 step further. Moving all the way around to the top side. We do pick off a Marine already. I do just have Clem sitting between the natural and the third base with a lot of tanks. It'll be hard to get a position here, but of course, souL is now the player with the Raven advantage. He has double Matrix to drop down to help him break a position. Let's see what he chooses. 1 and 2, and here we go. The next tank along from Clem is in siege, and the others are kind of just out of range.
Yeah, there's 1 tank on the left side. I got a couple of shots off, but souL definitely finding an absolutely amazing opening here. Clem was economically ahead, but that is gone. And these SCVs are going to pass tank fire as well, so a few more of them go down. This Orbital's even in a bit of trouble. The Orbital is in a bit of trouble. Clem is going to be able to save it, but not before losing 22 SCVs. souL doing an amazing job there in sharking around, looking for an opening, and he found the opening. And that's where Clem wishes he didn't lose those Ravens before. Because if he could just drop the Interference Matrix too, it's no big deal. Or some auto turrets.
Yeah, not having a Matrix of your own is just a killer in that situation, as we are going to see this little drop of souL again. Even more SCVs. Clem is now down by almost 25 workers. Is not having a good time in that regard. So looks as though souL well on his track to tying up this series 1-1 ahead of Romanticide for map 3. Just needs to obviously not make too many mistakes here. I mean, should be able to play this one out as at some point here, Clem as well just can't necessarily get enough stuff up to defend. Even in defensive positions, souL will start to overrun. So, I mean, you look at an armory that's just finished up, so souL can start 2-2 as well. Clem's armory currently not continuing to build, needs to fix that, or his 2-2 will be late. I mean, if it even comes down to that, because again, it can end much sooner than that as well, for sure.
Clem is setting up a little drop, realizing that he really needs to get a big W on the board somewhere. It's actually a bit wild as well to see how blind Clem was. He just didn't have any vision at all in the center of the map. Even if he had, there was still a chance that souL could have faked going towards the left, then goes to the right or the other way around. souL is going to try to be a little bit more aggressive right when a double drop does show up in his main base, so it feels a bit unnecessary. Might be good enough to just end the game, but you do want to be careful doing this kind of stuff. souL is losing a lot of SCVs at home, but he does get another 2 tanks of Clem.
And souL going to take some damage, but now his souL's Marines are showing up for the defense. He is going to turn the Clem drop away.
Ready.
Clem could go to the third, and yeah, Marine's kind of walking into some trouble.
No.
How is Clem on the way back into this? The supplies are closing, and now Clem's on a third base, killing a whole ton of workers, a sensor tower, depots. Brody, how does he find all this damage out of nowhere? Oh my goodness. souL is just running around slowly chasing down a drop, which, I mean, these Marines are kind of misrallied again, and they're going to end up turning to fight a little bit.
Clem just goes back into the main base. souL does have some units here, but not necessarily enough. He is about to get his 2-2 upgrade, though. I mean, souL just took an outrageous amount of damage. Even the fourth base of souL is going to be in trouble. souL is still busy dealing with these 12 Marines. These are the best 12 Marines I've ever seen. This command center is going to fall. This is ridiculous. 2 minutes ago, or 90 seconds ago, I would have said the odds of souL winning this game are 99-1. And now Clem is actually 2 supply ahead, 13 workers ahead, is far behind in upgrades. I mean, when souL was attacking the command center again in the top, I did say it feels a bit unnecessary. As Clem wants more, Clem gets a tank, Clem gets a few more SCVs.
Oh my god.
Boy, this is ridiculous. This is the best drop I've ever seen in my life. The best 12 Marines in 12 years of StarCraft 2.
I can already hear Twitch chat yelling, what do you mean souL's going 1-1? Look at Clem play. He's actually playing amazing, though. Like, what is this turnaround? These Marines, I actually can't get over what those Marines have done. One double drop has done more damage than perhaps everything else combined in this game. At least it feels like it.
It wasn't even a full double drop.
Yeah, I know. Just half of one medevac, yeah.
All of that was amazing for Clem, but it doesn't mean Clem is winning. He's still down 20 army supply. He still needs to survive another wave of souL aggression. Clem does have 1 tank sieged up. There's a lot of Marines coming in. Awkward fight by souL. Clem is down in upgrades. Upgrades to hurt. But Clem murders the army of souL, and if he wasn't ahead before, I do think he is ahead now as he's going up to 4 bases. This is an outrageous day of SC2 so far, where nothing is what it seems like. And you remember those 12 hero Marines that already have like 27 kills or more on them? They are going back to the main base, and souL is not ready.
We can make a movie out of this double drop, and right now we're moving on to the sequel because we already had enough action for them for 1 movie, and here they are again in the main base, clearly SCVs. Do they get this orbital? They honestly, some SCVs are coming back to repair it, and now they're just going to get those SCVs. These Marines actually are going to die here. Their final stand.
The orbital!
Oh my goodness, they actually get the orbital.
I clicked on all those Marines, and it's obviously hard to see how many kills they had in total, but there were so many Marines that had 5 or 6 kills. Clem is now 23 workers ahead, and he's catching up in the upgrade. souL does not have 3-3 on the way. This is a ridiculous comeback. This didn't just look bad for Clem. This looked like I'm going to tap out kind of bad for Clem. But Clem decided to stick it in there. And he's like, you know what? 12 Marines and a dream, or 14 Marines, whatever it was. But those 2 medevacs were not full. Yes, completely turned it around. Still down a little bit in army supply, but obviously souL has to be a little tilted. But everything has gone down in the last few minutes. And I can see souL taking another poor engagement just because he's upset he's spaghetti. Does get a double kill on the Vikings, and that's nice. But it's safe to say, Wadi, that he needs a lot more than 2 Viking kills.
Man, it's just like, it's 4 bases against 2. Like, when did this happen? How did this happen? All of those Marines, I mean, we know how, but it was ridiculous how much he found. And we even get the Raven there. He gets 1 last anti-arm missile off, which is nice and all, but souL's going to take another massive fight into siege tanks because he knows he's just down bases. He needs to make plays, but that's just not going to do it for him. And he's just put into a position where he feels the need to make these attacks, and it's just not going to be enough. Clem has the double drop round 2 as they stim in. Clay take down a medevac, aiming for the orbital. SCVs turn back to repair it as these SCVs probably going to take a bunch of damage. Clem's going to commit for them now as the tank on the high ground will slowly clean up. Clem lifts, gets away, and souL now going to make a bid for the main.
Yep, I mean, you may as well, right? Desperate times call for desperate measures. There's also a liberated sieging up in the natural. This is kind of a cool move by souL because it truly became a do or die scenario for him. And this is starting to look like a little bit of do, even though he only has 16 SCVs left. But he is getting right on top of the production, and the army supplies are still dangerously close. Great move by souL. Did Clem get a little bit too carried away with trying to find more damage with more double drops? But all he had to do was defend, and Clem cleaned this up. He does get the tanks, but the Marine count, it's 47 Marines against 5.
Yeah, the Marines from souL might just be able to power through if the tanks can't take positions. Clem losing so much production. He has workers, he has other bases to work with, but souL's maybe about to strike one of them, and there's only one tank to defend there, so Clem might be about to lose that low ground orbital. And that could be a turning point as well. Okay, he has got other tanks showing up, so he knows the need to defend that. That's really nice, although it looks like souL's just going to go for it as he drops in from one side, he runs in from the other. There's so many tanks, though. Marines showing up in the right place from Clem just to absorb a bit of damage. It is enough from Clem to hold. I mean, souL really made the right move to give him the best possible chance at the end, but Clem handled it anyway, and Clem now takes a 2-0 lead. But Roddy, this was not meant to be a 2-0 lead. This was meant to go 1-1. Like, I mean, that was just ridiculous.
To say that it looked bad for Clem, it'd be the understatement of the century. It looked terrible for Clem, like absolutely le terrible. It looked like it was an impossible game for Clem to win, even more than that first one. Man, like, Marty, I feel like this is like, if you never watched StarCraft 2 before, you'd probably be thinking like, can these commentators just shut up, calling everything epic and a comeback? But the numbers don't lie. It's mental Clem won this game, and it's mental how he handled the super uncomfortable and awkward positions he was put in that first game as well. It is Clem unleashed. Those 12 Marines, they deserve a Medal of Honor, and they're all the MVP because they absolutely turned this game around for Clem. souL, I think that souL should have just taken a moment and be like, well, 12 Marines in my base, that's kind of annoying, let's deal with that. Instead, souL was like, oh yeah, I'll sort of deal with that, and I'm also going to attack this base at 12 o'clock because I have enough firepower. Then that didn't quite work out. Then we had the miss rally, the second miss rally, and then souL just really felt the pain of playing against the Terran, where the Marines were in the main, in the third, or the triangle, back into the main, back to the low ground, and it never stopped.
Just complete chaos, right? I mean, 12 Marines that are just absolutely heroes for Clem, and now 2-0 up, and still got to be feeling horrible, right? You know, a game you're winning by far and away. And, you know, we mentioned this about kind of the Skillers games as well. When he won 2 in a row, Max Pax was winning those games, and some of them rather heavily, and Skillers turns them around. That's a hard position to pull yourself out of, but at least that was 2-2. Now souL has kind of had those games, and he's down 0-2, needs to win 3 in a row. And I don't know how you make yourself believe right now, because to me, I'm thinking, surely not. Like, he's just beating me on every turn.
These are playoffs, Wadi, and that's the difference, I guess, between playing round-robin group stages, where we are playing for money and everybody wants to get themselves into a good spot for the playoffs. But in the playoffs, you do truly see some wild games. I feel like I've seen more good games today than I've done sometimes in the past traveling to an event. I remember one in Montreal where it felt like for 3 days in a row we had one-sided games, and like it was actually kind of hard to pinpoint something crazy. Well, we are not even halfway done today. We're not even a quarter, I guess, or maybe we are 25% in, and we have seen madness. Can this man somehow turn things around? Hailing from Poland, playing an absolutely fantastic DreamHack Masters season so far, but he's down 0-2 and he needs to win the next 3 if he wants to advance to the next round. This is souL.
Up against Red Terran in the bottom right corner of the map from Team Liquid, it is Clem.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, Wadi, but I almost hope we can just have a very boring, straightforward, one-sided victory for one guy. Don't care who it is.
I know.
Just so we can go back to reality and see what StarCraft 2 can be, where one person just wins from minute 3, gets ahead, gets further ahead, and closes out with the first push. Because that happens too, of course, especially in this level. People are so good, they don't often let leads slip away. And all the epic games, it takes 2 to tango, but it also takes one person to kind of mess up, because normally you're not supposed to make comebacks the way that Clem just made game 2. Like game 1, you could say Clem won because he's an extraordinary player, and no matter how bad things look or how uncomfortable or difficult the situation is to tackle, Clem is good enough to do that stuff. I can live with that, right? But game 2, Clem had no business winning that game. It definitely was a bit of a troll, but the fact that Clem even somehow forced that throw is, yeah, nothing short of spectacular.
Yep. You know, it's one of the main things about Clem. We talk about it usually a lot in his TVZ, but the retention of units, right? And being able to keep units alive and use them again and again. And that drop is obviously just the highlight of that idea. And Yeah, I mean, that's just the sort of thing that doesn't happen every day. Those units do not usually get that much value out of themselves. So, ridiculous stuff. And Clem finds himself up 2-0 on Romanticide, which in itself can be a pretty ridiculous map for these two in this matchup. It's one where obviously it encourages a lot more passive play, and sometimes these two will just go 20 minutes, not really doing all that much, and just kind of waiting for, the 5-6 base fights to kind of break out.
Well, I'm okay with a one-sided victory. I'm also okay with a boring game. Just bring me back to reality, because now my expectations are going to be unreal. I'm like, oh my god. Well, we already are casting the best game ever, but apparently the best game ever is in the best state ever because everything is epic, and that's just not the way that it's ever supposed to be. But, it's like football. You have a 0-0 every now and then, right? I feel right now if this was the equivalent of the European Championships of football, the first 4 games were 5-3, 4-6, a 4-4 tie, where one team was leading 4-0. Like, yeah, okay, that doesn't happen, right? Well, apparently it does today.
We've just been picked to cast a ridiculous div StarCraft. You gotta love it. As we do have Reapers and Hellions gonna dive here from Clem. Typical Clem move, being hyper aggressive already. His Hellions can't even join in the fight, and he's still trying to trade. He does get the Hellions involved a little bit, only loses 1 Reaper, and he's still chasing for the Hellion, but with the repair, it will not go any further than that. And Clem is just gonna have to turn back away and get out of there.
Is it just me, or could those Hellions of Clem have been a bit closer to the ramp, where they potentially could have gotten 1 or 2 more shots off? And then I even think his target fire on the high ground was all over the place. I think there was more potential there for Clem than what he got out of it.
No, I'm with you. I 100% agree, because they were not even close to the edge, right? They were like really quite far away. They only shot when units really chased. I was going to say that a little bit as well, I think, because it was quite apparent. Now we've got the medevac here, so a Marine and a couple of Reapers and the Hellions all jump in at the same time. The Cyclone is focused on the medevac, which is great if you get it, but now you don't get it. The grenade might guarantee the Cyclone kill, which it does. The other units show up, and Clem does have to back out of that, but killing a Cyclone, forcing an SCV pull, damage continues to rack up, and he's back in the main base again, because of course he is. Yeah, why wouldn't he be?
He's like, you're telling me that I've got a medevac that's almost dying and 2 Hellions with 5 HP? I'm pretty sure I can do something with it. Well, in this case, he couldn't, but what he can do is make sure that souL stays at home, because if we can just take a look at what's happening on Clem's side of the map, exactly, Njal, you're reading my thoughts, he's building a 3rd command center super early on location, and souL is, once more quite blind. That's just kind of what souL does in TFT, sometimes scouts in the beginning of the game, and that's about it. So even though it may seem pointless that Clem is shooting at a depot, and in a way it is, what he is doing is making sure that souL's at home, and he can comfortably get that base up.
Yep. Really nicely done. Clem gonna have the Raven himself across the map this time. He'll get an SCV, probably 2 before the tank gets rid of it. So nice little dive in with an auto turret. Of course, you always got to remember that's energy being used on auto turrets. That won't be there for matrices later. So this is only good if you're kind of planning on not using the Ravens until much later on, where they're going to have that energy back. But a couple of kills here, if that adds up over time, it can be cool. And he actually only put 1 turret down, and now he's just all the way back home. He's going to keep that Raven back.
I mean, Clem is just ahead, right? Like, what does souL have speaking for him? In which department would souL be ahead if we want to make a case for things looking good for souL? I don't really see it. His orbital is much later. It's not up and running yet. He's down he's down in workers.
Engineer and base are faster.
Okay, we found something.
That is it.
Will he use them immediately, though? That's the big question. He doesn't have the resources yet.
Yeah. No, it's Clem just does have a lead in multiple different ways right now as a Reaper and Hellion coming through, and we are just going to be seeing the Hellion just having to back away there. It's crazy. Clem's trying to find single Marines with like a Reaper, Hellion, and Cyclone against like an entire Terran army. Like, Clem, calm down a second. I don't know if it matters that much.
Oh, this is when you're feeling it as a player.
Yeah.
Clem is obviously a momentum-based player. Clem is always good. Even a bad day for Clem is probably better than any of us would ever experience in our life. But Clem definitely has moments where he is feeling it up to the next level. And I think winning a game like he just won on Oxide, you take a look at the graphs and you're like, whoa, I won that? It's like, yes, Clem, you won that. And that just gives him wings, man. Like, Clem is flying at this point, and he is obviously playing his A game here so far in game 3. He is going to try to be aggressive first. So sending out 1 brave Marine that's going to see this entire army show up. That's going to give him the heads up that he needs to get in position. Clem sees it. I mean, those eBays, by the way, the upgrades are actually really not that far apart.
Yeah, I know. He didn't start them for ages as Clem. Sneaking forward actually puts the Ravens toward the main base where Vikings are going to chase them down. He actually got a Matrix off on one of the Ravens of Clem, so that just has to run, and now it's going to get caught by Vikings. So this play, whatever the plan was, honestly didn't really work out.
It did not, but there is a drop heading towards the natural. That might work out. 8 Marines, they have steam. Okay, Clem kind of flying over the turret there. And souL's going to chase the army of Clem. This is kind of a wild fight in the top right side. Clem is going to pick up the... Oh, no!
Oh.
Picks up 2 tanks, loses them. So souL definitely getting a victory there, but not before losing 15 SCVs. I actually wish that souL would have not stopped with his army. I wish souL would have just kept going. Because you just won a fight there and you kill a medevac with 2 tanks inside of it. I know it's hard to be the aggressor and on the romanticide, but I think after losing all those SCVs, I would have liked to see him do something with his big army.
It feels like he needs to counterattack, right? And that's going to be his moment when he's just cleaned out all those tanks that would have maybe made Clem a little bit weaker defensively. Right now, Clem sees where the army of souL is, and guess what? He's back around the right-hand side already, making a play for the third base, and I think he's going to get in a position before souL's in position. It's going to be close. A couple of Hellions kind of told souL that Clem was coming this way, and maybe Clem should have kept those back, but just hide this a little bit longer. We are going to fight with tank siege, but souL's the one that's chasing into tanks, but rightfully so. He's going to take them down.
Yep, Clem even turning around with the last few Marines there. Definitely felt Clem getting a little bit carried away there. Very solid defense by souL, knowing that the army was there. And it all started going downhill a bit when Clem sent those Ravens into the main, right? We dropped some other turrets that shot at supply depots, and that was kind of it. They didn't really do a whole lot else. Now, Clem did, of course, get himself economically ahead. souL has caught up a bit, but if Nyo could just show us the income advantage for a little bit, you guys can see that over the last 5 minutes, Clem definitely has been mining quite a bit more. So as long as souL is not running towards the other side, I guess Clem, his actions can be justified.
And Clem's already flown that 4th command center out. souL's is still building. So another little advantage to talk about from Clem there. Clem start the 2-2. souL's waiting on an armory. You know, once more, we're kind of listing all these advantages for Clem, and yet what can we talk about for souL? Not really very much.
souL has more Vikings.
Maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he has. There's 4 Vikings against 2. So there is maybe something he could do with it. souL set up a triple drop. He's like, that went really well on 2K. Clem is like, I know. We're not going to do that again.
Liberators from Clem not finding an opening, so that's a bit of an investment that doesn't really go anywhere for the moment, at least. But they're also still alive, and that means that, of course, they can find a chance at a later point. They don't have to immediately be effective. So that should be probably okay for Clem, too. His Marines and tanks going to rip through those rocks, open that pathway up, and Clem just going to stay poised on the map to pounce if he sees the chance.
souL's going to drop extra starports already. So it seems like Clem is going to do the exact same thing. Never mind. We'll see where they go. We often have one person going super heavy on Vikings and Liberators, and then the other one going Raven. I feel like you don't often see both players go mass Raven.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, right? Where if one guy goes for it, it's almost like he's like trying to survive the Viking Lib stage, then he gets to this Raven count and the Ravens just win out. Yeah, it is very rare you see both of them go, and I think that a lot of the time is just because, you know, players a lot of the time seem to prefer Viking Lib. It seems to be like a simpler transition than trying to get the Ravens up and to use those Ravens effectively. So I wonder if that's something to do with it, as this fight is just going to be a Viking trade out. Clem seemingly coming out a little bit ahead in that at the very end as he's killing 7 SCVs. That Liberator harassment is going the distance, actually.
Yep. One Liberator was obviously quite annoying to deal with in the natural as it got the kill on the Marine. This Liberator in the top right side is also going to be a bit frustrating. Clem is already maxed out. souL is not. Clem is going to try. Ooh, that's actually kind of a cool move, but nice scan by souL. souL throws out a scan. He's like, where your army at? Oh, right there. Caught everything.
Yeah, that couldn't have placed that scan any better if he tried. It's going to be a weird fight as souL is going to be caught kind of away from his base. Clem's going to be able to get towards the 4th here, perhaps, and this is where souL is going to be forced to fight or go across the map. I feel like he needs to fight as... Oh my god, Clem's just going to stim straight to the natural. He sees units there, though. He sends some units now. He peels back, wants to protect his siege tanks. The other units trailing behind that. He kind of needs to win the engagement, and he obviously knows that, although he's still got so many Marines up here, but he's also stimmed a whole bunch already. Here we go.
Yep, I mean, this cannot possibly work out for Clem, you would think, because he's just so spread out. The tanks do get a couple of good shots up on the right side. souL is going to be able to clean this up. Just the question is, how many units is he going to lose? And so far, it seems like the answer is not too many. Vikings are landing on top of tanks, though. And that's where Clem will still turn this into a pretty all-right trade in the end. It did feel that Clem was starting to spread himself a little thin there. He almost just walked into the perfect trap where souL had units everywhere. Well, yeah, keeping a couple of tanks alive, getting some nice pickups with the Vikings at the tail end of all of that, and going up to 5 bases. I guess Clem can get away with it. Yeah. Someone is frozen on Hangouts. I don't know who. All right, apparently I am live and Wardy is having a little bit of an issue, so we're gonna try to solve this one. Wow, Kalara's down, man down, Wardy down, man down. It's gonna be a solo cast of Roddy. That means it's a Monday night. I'm gonna grab a cheeky one. We're gonna sort this one out, guys. Hopefully Wardy and James will be able to come back soon. souL's just trying to stabilize at this point. He's up to 4 bases. Clem is obviously at 5. souL knows that he's a little bit behind. What I'm concerned about is that while Clem was so in souL's face, souL had the quicker fusion core, but he actually never got advanced ballistics. Meanwhile, Clem's advanced ballistics is about to finish up, and it seems like souL just completely forgot about it. And I believe Wardy's back.
I am indeed, apparently at least, as we have Marine tanks set up in the middle of the map. These Liberators are pushing through, and obviously it looks as though Clem is gonna just keep on pressing forward, but souL's gonna split his army down to the bottom side, and that's a counterattack Clem might have to deal with. Now souL says, nope, gonna bring it back, and Clem, no, I've seen this one before, Roddy. I don't know if I liked it last time. This time might go a bit better for Clem. Oh no, there's so many tanks here, though.
There are so many tanks, and look at the Liberators and Vikings of Clem. What are they doing? They are hovering above the tanks of souL. Now they're gonna siege up. They're gonna try to make some justice rain from above. souL is gonna run into 7 tanks of Clem, though. My goodness, what a wild fight. Liberators obviously finding quite some damage. They pick up the tanks, they pick up SCVs, but Clem lost everything, but not before killing an Orbital, and he's gonna kill a couple of SCVs. These fights are outrageous. We often talk about how hard it is to be aggressive on the Romantic side. I guess this is where we can see why that statement holds true. But Clem wouldn't be Clem if he doesn't somehow find 8 Marines, super low on HP. 1 tank could get 8 kills. Boom! Oh, 6.
6. Yeah, that was kind of waiting to happen. As souL is going to try a counterattack. Clem is down a bit on army, but the rebuild potential is obviously in his hands. He can give up a base if needed as well here, probably just to say, right, give me a bit more time to prepare. He's actually going to win the Viking fight already. Now he'll back away. This place hasn't even landed, so he's just going to start evacuating very early on. And he's just going to make a defense at the 3rd base instead, where he has got tanks coming through. He's going to stim some Marines forward. There's just not a tank here at all for souL. He's just going to try and brute force his way in, but the tanks will change this fight into Clem's favor, and he is just going to push souL back.
Yeah, and that is actually an army that souL's gonna have a hard time replacing, man, because he did lose a lot of SCVs over the last few minutes in this game. souL has still never started advanced ballistics, so he made an investment into the fusion core quite a bit quicker. Never got it. Doesn't even have a single Liberator on the map at this point, so maybe it's not that important. But meanwhile, Clem is working with Liberators, with Vikings. He's building 4 Libs at a time. souL is gonna pick one off. Clem throws down a scan. And while this is going on, he's also taking the top right side. He's going to send a couple of brave Marines out on a solo mission to walk into a relatively exposed base of souL where there's only 1 tank. And I feel like we're getting closer to the beginning of the end of this game on the Romantic side, Wardy.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of a slow death for souL, right? You know, he's just kind of got a bit of life left in him, but Clem just has the advantages across the board. And we've seen some crazy comebacks. I just don't know if I want to believe that Clem's going to be the one to let a crazy comeback happen against him. That just seems kind of against Clem's nature, you know?
He's even researching Yamato cannon.
Oh, I like it. I can get behind some BCs for a bit of fun at the end of this TVT.
That is how comebacks happen, though, when you go into BCs, when you really don't have to go into BCs. Like, I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. souL does still have some more Marines. More Marines means obviously more mobility, but it also means you have to avoid those tanks like the absolute plague. Clem is playing a marvelous TVT so far on the Romanta side. This is going to push this army back. The Liberator count is at 5. 5 Liberators backed up by 11 Vikings. I think the only thing souL could really do is turn this into a very scrappy, messy game with a lot of running. souL's army is better in running. Clem's army is better at fighting.
Absolutely. It's just going to be seeing this force of souL trying to get into position, but here come the Liberators, and they're going to siege up, and souL's just going to try and fight it off, but the tanks are supporting, and obviously souL just has to back away from this one, and Clem will even just chase him down. Marines are like, we want to get those siege tanks. They're going to run straight on after them. souL is going to hit the top right, and he will kill off this planetary fortress. But, I mean, even losing Marines against a planetary feels so expensive for souL at the moment.
Yeah, and how is he going to deal with all these Liberators, all these tanks, and a couple of Marines here by Clem? 2 Libs still going strong. The Marines are going to have to steam forward, or we're going to have to give up this base. It seems like souL wants to give up this base. He is still trying to make magic happen with the Marines in the top right side. I don't think he's going to kill this planetary, though. He is going to try, but Clem should have some units showing up eventually, right?
Yeah, I imagine so. Like, there's got to be some kind of reinforcements, right? As STVs have just been slaughtered. He has got the Libs forward again. This time he'll get a couple tanks before it's dealt with. Apparently, it's just these 2 Vikings. They're the only guys that care about protecting the base. But they will get the job done alongside the planetary and the death of many workers. Here he goes, souL pulling SCVs to try and break out. Clem knows it's just about landing the Vikings and trading out as best as he can here. He might get cleaned up, but he's obviously got reinforcements for days. A line of red streaming through the middle of Romanta's side and coming across the map to put an end to souL.
Yeah, Clem is even getting the funny upgrades now. Smart service on the way so these Vikings can land and fly a little bit quicker. The battle cruisers are about to show up, and will we see tactical jump into the main base immediately? I think the answer is yes. Go ahead, Clem. Make them shine. Battle cruiser operational. Give us a tactical jump.
Yes, GC, Marines, Libs, BCs all coming through. Just gonna see GG typed out from souL. WW, he likes to do that.